This sweatsuit feels like instant recovery mode. Meet the smooth spacer matching hoodie and joggers from Lululemon. In a weighty fabric that's soft on the inside and sleek against your skin, bringing that perfect cool-down feeling wherever the day lands. Smooth spacer sets. Available now at Lululemon.com.
Red Apple Audio Networks, Walter Sterling with Michelle Gibson, journalist and alternative history researcher. What do you mean alternative history? Well, all we know for sure about our history is that it's his story. That's his story. We don't know if it's the whole story. And every time you and I explore it a little more with Michelle Gibson, we find out there are many pieces to all stories that are missing, significantly so. And it's great to have Michelle Gibson on tonight. Always a good response when you're on, Michelle, and I'm grateful for that. Let's talk about whatever you want to talk about. What are you working on lately that fascinates you, that is intriguing you and making you go, this needs more work?
Well, actually, I am working my way down the southern shore of Lake Erie, as it happens to be. And I'm leaving the Ashtabula area and the Fairport Harbor area, and I'm getting ready to head into Cleveland on my study of the Great Lakes. So I've been doing in-depth research around the Great Lakes and heading towards the end of the series, but I've taken me at least a month for each one. And there's just a lot of information to be found.
That's interesting right there, Michelle. You didn't say Göbekli Tepe. You didn't say Peru. You didn't say Cairo. You said the Great Lakes headed toward Cleveland. What could possibly be headed toward the Midwest, Ohio, Pennsylvania? What are you looking for?
There's a ton of information that's just been hidden right in front of our eyes. And that's a byline that I have on my website, which is a blog, which is how I do my research. I blog, and then I make videos from my blogs. And you were talking about alternative history research. There's just so much that's been kept from our awareness. And like we've been given this fake narrative to explain everything in existence. But when you start looking closely at the narrative, it really does fall apart. And the Great Lakes hold a lot of secrets. And there's a lot of different angles I could take on that, but just the railroad history itself through that area. You still have the lake shoreline with Amtrak. It has very few passenger stops compared to what used to go through the area. The water level route of the New York Central Railroad years and years and years ago. The railroads have disappeared, and they were replaced by highways and cars and buses, and they took away the rail infrastructure that was everywhere. And so I've been pulling that out of the ether and putting it all in one place in my blog to show in place after place after place, there's this history that's missing. But in the process of doing this research, I'm focusing on waterfalls and lighthouses. And there's a lot of other things around that. But when you start looking into the connection between waterfalls and gorges and railroads, there's a pattern. And we don't know anything about that pattern because everything is natural. We don't know anything about an energy grid. And yet when you look at the history, the railroad history is there. And the main time of it was like the late 1800s, early 1900s. And then they started removing the infrastructure, literally, physically taking the tracks out, stopping the service, and used to have interurbans running between cities. But if you have interurbans, why do you need cars? You know, they had all that infrastructure was already there.
And in many cases, it's still there. Right now, there's a big push to put in a rail line from Scranton to New York City. That's a big push. The other big push in Ohio, as you mentioned, is to put in a rail line to go from Cleveland to Columbus to Cincinnati And I'm like, what are you talking about? Those lines are either still sitting there and need to be cleaned, or why the heck did you take them out?
Right, exactly. And that's the big question. I mean, whether or not you are comfortable with the whole idea of a history that we haven't even been told about, question remains, why did they remove it in the first place? And like we talked about in our first talk a couple of weeks ago, you talked about the empty, abandoned subways in Cleveland. And
Yes, abandoned subways in Cleveland. And since we talked, I have found out about abandoned subways in Cincinnati.
and they're everywhere.
Yeah.
So there's all this underground infrastructure that is just literally abandoned. But not only that, there is a lot of abandoned infrastructure on the surface. And so, like this morning, I was looking at Painesville, Ohio, and Painesville was a railroad hub, but it was also a manufacturing hub. And I guess it still is a little bit, but not like it was. And that's the case with a lot of places in the Rust Belt. Even got a name, the Rust Belt.
There you go. Michelle Gibson, were you in Painesville this morning?
No, I was in Painesville on my computer.
Got it.
Looking at the history. And there was a rayon factory there, industrial rayon factory. And we had ceased operations in like 1980, sometime around there. And then it's just abandoned. The property's abandoned. And there was a lot of chemical use there. So you've got all of these places that have this industrial history with all of these chemicals in the environment, a lot of contaminated places. And that's not just in Ohio, but that's in a lot of different places.
Well, part of the reason they can't do anything with those is because of the chemicals there and because the EPA won't let them clean it up. However, we're looking for villains, Michelle. Who do you blame for the ending of the railroads, the trolleys, the subways? Who do we look at to blame?
I think you follow the money, and you follow the big names that we've always been told. And so you have John D. Rockefeller and Henry Flagler founding Standard Oil in 1870, and that was just a mere 11 years after the oil boom in Pennsylvania, which was in Titusville. There's a lot of interconnections with Ohio and Pennsylvania, and coal for the steel mills in Ohio, and it was back and forth between Lake Erie, like Conneaut and Ashtabula, with the coal and iron ore. It's all connected to the steel mills. And so you have figures like Andrew Carnegie figuring prominently in that sector. You have John D. Rockefeller. You have Henry Ford with the cars, and they're ranked as like the richest men in American history, among others. But they're at the top, and so I believe there was a highly integrated energy grid that was functioning with free energy. It got destroyed. That's my strong belief that that's what we're looking at, the destruction of a totally integrated energy grid that was worldwide. And I think that area that goes through the Great Lakes, I think that was an important part of it. And I think it was with the railroads and the waterfalls and the canals and the lighthouses, it was like a hydroelectric powerhouse through that area. It's my opinion that when this energy grid was, I believe it was deliberately destroyed, it created the Great Lakes that we see today. All the water.
When they destroyed the energy grid, we're talking ley lines. Is that what we're talking about?
It would have been on the ley line. It's all connected to the ley lines. The ley lines were part of the energy grid. But when you start looking at, for example, I've been looking at the depths of all of the Great Lakes. They are quite shallow, especially Lake Erie. Lake Erie is the shallowest of the five. So around the shoreline, it's not very deep. You get into the middle of the lakes before you start hitting any real depth. Lake Erie has the seiches, So you've got those times when the winds push the whole water in the lake in one direction or the other. I think it's normally from Toledo to Buffalo. And, so why is that? Does that phenomenon even happen where you've got one end being emptied out and the other end just getting piled high with water? I think I pronounced that correctly, Seiche, which I didn't know about until I started looking at Lake Erie. And then you have the history of the shipwrecks. Well, they have shipwrecks because the lakes are shallow. And there's a lot of places where, like, there's so many shipwrecks.
Right. Well, how?
Most of them aren't known.
When?
So why?
When did the lakes get filled? When did that happen?
So I think what happened is something destroyed this energy grid, and there's so many waterfalls throughout that whole region, all 5 of the Great Lakes. Right. Waterfalls everywhere, and I found several that are emptying right into the lakes. And I think the system, whatever happened, destroyed this system, and the water just infilled. Is the conclusion that I'm coming to. And we're given stories about like the lighthouses, and they were all built at a certain time. Well, I think the lighthouses were part of this energy grid too. They weren't built when they told us. They served a different function, which, in my opinion, had something to do with light energy, distribution of light energy, and they were repurposed into navigational aids when, all of a sudden you have these rocky shores and shoals where ships founder. They needed, we get told they were used for navigation, but like I said, I think they had a different purpose.
Right, and who built them?
People here.
So not our industrialists in 1880. It was long before that. Correct.
That's correct. It's been here for a very long time. Very, very old places. The Garfield Mausoleum in Cleveland. Have you seen it?
Yes, it's spooky as hell.
And it's grand.
Yes.
There's a market in Cleveland. I can't think of it, but it's also a very old, ornate location.
The West Side Market.
The West Side Market. I can't pull it. Yeah, thank you. So there was a highly advanced civilization here. It wasn't cowboys and Indians. That's been part of the hijack. That's what Hollywood was for. Whoever was behind this, talk about the famous industrialists. You talk about the royal families and the Vatican, the Jesuits, the Franciscans were involved in this. The secret societies, besides the Freemasons, you had the Knights of Pythias and the Oddfellows, and the Elks even were involved in this, bringing everything back online after whatever happened, destroyed the surface of the earth and brought us what we see today. But we don't know any better because we've always been educated in this very specific historical narrative. And they're telling us that things were constructed when we had low technology in our narrative. So it's contradictory in itself right there. So I think whatever they were doing when they said that they were building it, they were actually digging it out and bringing it back online.
Michelle Gibson, alternative researcher, alternative history explorer. Amazing stories every week. Michelle Gibson, how do I find you online?
piercingtheveilofillusion.com is my blog website, and my YouTube channel is at Michelle Gibson 8946.
Next time, you're going to share with us who it was who took us offline and who's putting us back online. Michelle Gibson, thank you very much for being on Walter Sterling's Another Side of Midnight.
LifeLock, how can I help?
The IRS said I
filed my return,
but I haven't.
1 in 4 tax-paying Americans has paid the price of identity fraud.
What do I do?
My refund, though. I'm freaking out.
Don't worry, I can fix this.
LifeLock fixes identity theft guaranteed. and get your money back with up to $3 million in coverage.
I'm so relieved.
No problem. I'll be with you every step of the way.
1 in 4 was a fraud-paying American. Not anymore. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.